My name is Christy Carter. I'm the Aging and Disability Coordinator here at the Milwaukee LGBT Center. And I'm with my colleagues, and we're going to have a panel about ableism and the intersectionalities that exist within it. We welcome you. I'm also going to put in the chat a link to the survey that we appreciate if you would fill out after. And never mind, I will do that after because I have a copy of something else on here. So, Kira, you can go to the next slide. So like I said, my name is Christy Carter. I'm the Aging and Disability Coordinator at the Milwaukee LGBT Center. And I'm glad you're here. I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves.
I will go next. My name is Lauren Grodzinski. I am a work incentives benefit specialist and a disability rights advocate for Rogard Advocacy Studios. And I also have kind of a plethora of disabilities myself. So.
And then my name's Kira, and I recently finished up my internship at the center. And I'll just be sharing my experiences as a child of a mother with a disability. So.
And then I'm going to put the survey link in there now. And I forgot to mention that I identify as having a disability plus am part of the LGBT community myself. So, okay, we can go forward. So today, we're gonna watch a video on what ableism is, and then we have questions that we can answer, and then a group discussion and reflections. But we want this to be interactive, so feel free to ask questions. Like I said, we will talk, but we want you to be a part of this. So our first video we'll watch is about ableism and what it is.
This video is sponsored by Surfshark. Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm a disabled YouTuber and oh my god, disabled YouTuber? Why not just a YouTuber? And right now I'm going to explain what ableism is to you as simply as possible. Ableism doesn't exist. Like giraffes. No, it very much does, and also giraffes? They're just horses with neck problems. Oh, I can see this is going to go well. Ableism is discrimination and social prejudice against people who have disabilities or people who are perceived to be disabled. Ableism characterizes people as being defined by their disabilities and inferior to the non-disabled. They're also assigned perceived abilities, skills, or characteristics, or the lack thereof. Because they're lazy? Great example. Also, no. You're mean. Disabled people are mean. We're not a lump of people, and we're allowed to have feelings. We're allowed to live our lives. And some of those lives are truly inspirational. Oh Lord. So a lot of ableism and anti-disability language is really obvious and really out there, and you don't need me to explain it. I mean, you're too smart for that, and I'm too, well, I was going to say too busy for that, but I'm in lockdown in a pandemic, so. Oh, I mean, plus disabled people spend most of their day on the sofa. Much of what I consider to be hurtful, though, comes in this rather insidious manner from people who don't think of themselves as being anti-disabled people and probably didn't mean for their words to be ableist, but they are. We can generally spot institutional ableism, lawful discrimination, lack of accessibility, absolutely no one in a position of power who has any disability of any kind. Oh, sure, the company hires disabled people, but does it promote them? Some interpersonal ableism is also very obvious. I mean, name-calling, bullying, abuse, boundary violations. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. But you've made it this far through the video already, so I'm betting that isn't really something you would do. No, this video is about how small things that you can do or you can say can hurt, even if you don't really mean them to. And I mean, even if it's not your intention. And even if you have the best of intentions. Let's go through some common stumbling blocks so you can avoid your own, oops, I did an ableism moment. And we're going to start at the top with the really big one. COVID-19 isn't a big deal because it only kills people with health conditions. Who aren't people? Look, we're now a year into the pandemic, and if you're still saying this, you're an asshole. I mean, that's it. I don't really have anything witty to add. I just wanted to start on a real downer, and then sort of remind you that some people have been shielding for over 12 months now, unable to even touch the loved ones they live with. So if you're having a party in your university dorm and posting on your Instagram story, you're an asshole. Being uncaring is one thing. Boasting about it is another. Oh, I don't even think of you as disabled. This one always stops my heart. Are the government watching? Do they hear that? Am I about to have all of my protections taken away? When you see disability as only a negative thing, you can't imagine why anyone would ever want to be labelled as such. But, as I have discussed numerous times on this channel, not saying you should go back and watch my old videos, but you should definitely go back and watch my old videos. The label disabled isn't necessarily something people with disabilities want to shrug off. It's a facet of our own self-identity, and it isn't yours to belittle. Indeed, if I'm going to be snarky, we might as well say, is that any better than saying, oh, I always forget that you're unattractive, and then I see you next to a normal person. Like, what? No. Am I meant to say thank you that you're declaring your decision to overlook a part of me you've decided is bad? Can I pray for you? Oh yeah, totally. I mean, of course you can. Religious freedoms and all that. I'm not going to tell you how or when to pray, but don't ask me. Jesus. I see where I went wrong there. Look, do whatever you want with an image of me you've concocted in your mind, but just don't bring it to my door. Disabled bodies are not public property. If I'm the type of person who wants people to pray for me, probably have already asked them to do that. And if I'm not, then you're just intruding. You don't look sick to me. I mean, your failure to develop scanning technologies behind your eyes is your own deficiency. I don't see what it has to do with me. Oh no, that's so terrible. I'm not a meanie. I understand that might just fly out of your mouth when someone tells you about their terrible car accident or how a big health crisis led to them being diagnosed with a genetic condition. I'm the latter. And I came to expect this reaction in the first few months after being diagnosed. But, I mean, when I'm just explaining why I have difficulty holding a pen 10 years later, why I can't walk very far, then I'm just telling you about my life. So rude. If you told me you were married and I responded, oh my god, I'm so sorry for you, that must be so awful, you'd probably look at me pretty strangely. Well, at least you look good. I hear this one most often just after I've told someone about my chronic pain. And yes, Janet, this dress is pretty. It is helping my mood. But shush now, because it is 5 p.m. somewhere in the world, and that means it is not time to belittle someone's pain. This is my disabled friend I was telling you about. I was your friend who just happened to have a disability. Now I'm an impolite acquaintance who also happens to have a disability. Don't announce someone's disability in their introduction unless there's a really clear reason to do so. This is my friend Jessica. She's married to Claudia. She likes dogs, the countryside, vintage fashion, and for some inexplicable reason, the entire Fast and Furious franchise. She lip reads, so don't talk while you're eating. That's fine. That is such an ugly wrist splint. Oh, yes, thank you, Janet. I am aware. But when my hand isn't working properly because it's a pandemic and I have to lift my own boxes, I need to wear it because I'm a bit obsessed with stopping my pregnant wife from lifting anything heavy. But when you insult someone's medical equipment, it feels like you're insulting a part of them. I rely on things like my mobility aids and I don't have another option. Your belittling it doesn't make me feel better about that. What you should do is help me to stay positive about my body's accessories. Your muscles are weak? Oh, I can help create an exercise plan to fix that. No, you can't. No. No, you can't. Chronic fatigue and exercise? Not a great combination. Floppy tissue and exercise? Not a great combination. Which is not to say that you can't get a specialist exercise regime put together for your specific body, but please don't listen to random people who tell you that they have the cure, a special movement or food that will fix you forever. Microaggressions are always difficult to suss out unless you're the person they're directed against. But a good rule of thumb when deciding whether what you're saying or doing is ableist is, if it was about race or gender, would you be in trouble? Most likely. Yeah, so let's not do that.
So we hope that that will kind of get us started on some things. The person in the video does a great job kind of poking fun and making it also a like real life example. So Lauren, do you want to go over the definition of ableism?
Yeah, so specifically, ableism is a discrimination or social prejudice against, excuse me, against people with disabilities or people who are perceived to have a disability based upon the belief that typical abilities are superior. Something that I am going to I'm going to show my nerd here pretty quick, is there is a episode of Star Trek Next Generation where, spoiler, Geordi's visor is actually the key to solving a problem that a group of people who have been genetically enhanced to be superior for specific skills missed. So which is, I always find very unique. So that belief that to be that belief that to have a disability makes you less is not necessarily the case. Frankly, it's usually not, which is kind of the biggest point here. So I'm gonna duck out at that one.
Sounds good. Do you want to switch to the slides?
Yeah.
Okay. So these are the questions that we're kind of going to focus on, but if you have other ones or want to share, there'll be time to do that later. So I guess we can start with the first one. Lauren, do you want to go first?
Sure. What does it mean to reclaim a word, and why is it important? I think the biggest, I'm going to use myself as an example. I use the word gay to describe myself. I am a bi woman, and I, for some reason, just have always preferred the word gay, probably because it makes me happy, because that's what it also means. And I'm a complete goofball. So that's probably one reason why I kind of steer towards that one. But that when I was kind of younger and coming up, you know, young guys would go, "Oh, that's gay." I'm like, yeah, so would always be my like response. And like, yeah, it means happy. And then it would always make them laugh. So it's kind of my way of reclaiming that word, and it has always been that way. So that's why I use that one.
Kira, do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, like on a similar thread, I personally identify as queer, which I know in the past has been used in ways to harm other people. And that's just something that it's an identity that I personally find comfort in, because it feels like more of an umbrella term, and I don't have to necessarily like be super nitpicky with the way that I identify. And so I think it's important to kind of like take back the power essentially that other people have kind of like leveraged against you, and kind of just take it back and be like, this isn't going to be something that causes harm. It's going to be something that like incites power inside of me. So that's what I think about that.
And then for me personally, friends of mine that also use wheelchairs or have disabilities have kind of taken back the word cripple we shorten it to crip. Now if somebody that didn't identify use that word, I probably look at them and be like, what the heck? But in the same way, we kind of took back the power and, you know, made it a positive. So.
And then do we want to move on to the next question, or
Sure. Lauren, do you want to start again?
So yeah, so person first language, this is something that I personally value very highly. It's something that my parents kind of ingrained into me is something that I was also kind of ingrained in me. I was just up there, a camp for people that have disabilities. We person first language, and looking at the person as a person first was always important there. And I've always worked at institutions that value that person first philosophy. It's very important to me. So what it basically means is that you're not putting any of your perceived labels that you see of that person first in your description of them when you choose language. So for instance, if I talk about myself, I'm an open book, or I try to be as much as possible. So I would say I am Lauren, because that's who I am right now. I am a, insert all of that, my pronouns and all that whatnot here. I'm not going to do that right now because that's nor the time nor the place. But everything that I choose, and then, that this is what I'm choosing to tell you about me in this instance. Sometimes I'm just Lauren. Sometimes I'm Lauren, hey, I'm also blind, or hey, I'm gay, or, this, that, or the other thing, because depending on the situation, because of my disability, because of my blindness, I may need help. So I have to be an open book. And in that disability queer place, you have to be very open because it's very raw. And that's kind of what this presentation is a little bit about, that rawness that people avoid. And I totally went to the place about person first language that people don't like, so I just got it over with. Sorry. Ow. Okay. Keep going.
No worries. I can share. So I too agree with person first language, but when I have a kind of another thing to add, it is important to look at the people first and all of the adjectives that Lauren was describing that could describe any one of us. But at the same time, we have to be aware of the institutions or the organizations that may be trying to use terminology to be better, right? But it's the way in which they're doing it. Is it appropriate? Are they really respecting, or is it almost just because I have to, or just because there's a policy, or just because I should?
Are they truly understanding why that person first language, and do they need it? Sometimes it's not needed. Sometimes you're trying to describe something very specific, so you don't need to use that person first language because there's not a person involved. It's an office, or it's a building, or it's a systemic whatever. Correct. Sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No worries. No, it was. Thank you for helping clarify. So definitely that's my input on person first language. And I'm also going to share this. There's many different people have different feelings regarding person first language, and there's sometimes a debate on if it should be used, or if it's a good thing, or if it's not, or if it's just to be politically correct. So we're not going to talk about the ups and downs of that, but we just thought that this would be a good starting point to get the conversation going. So.
I have feelings about this one, so I'm going to defer.
You're
The-
going.
I'm going to defer to, I don't want to be the first one to answer this one. Am I allowed to say someone with a disability is inspiring?
Yeah, I can. Do you want me? I can take that.
Go ahead, you take it.
So, am I allowed to say someone with a disability is inspiring? So for me, like, if it's inspiring that I just woke up and got dressed and took the bus and got to work, then no. If it's inspiring because I wrote a book and I like did all these awesome things that not the average person would do, then maybe. But I always like to just be me. I'm just the person I am. And I do things that I do because I'm me. A lot of people might, when you talk about disability being inspiring, there is a term that's known as disability porn. That does not mean like you're watching something that's inappropriate. What it means is like one of the main things that I can think of is the only disability is a bad attitude, and it has a cute little kid, usually with Down syndrome. And like, okay, so as an adult or as a person in your own experience, you shouldn't have a bad day or have a bad attitude because look at what this cute little kid has to experience. But maybe the child is just, out playing or experiencing things with their family and just being who they are.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Lauren, do you want to tag on now or?
Yeah. So people who have disabilities, we have a sense of dignity and a sense of pride in ourselves that runs very deep. And when all I can do is talk for me. I'm happy to be inspiring. If you want to find me inspiring, awesome. That's great. If you can learn from me, I'm a teacher. It's what I do. If you want to learn from my mistakes, if you want to, learn from my own education, my life experience, what have you, that's fantastic. But I'm going to do it the way in which works for me as someone with a disability. And that I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear about it. How I have to run my life. And people don't realize that you aren't the only person who thinks it's cool. Like there's a lot. Like we know we're rare. We don't see a lot of us out and about because I'm digressing. It's a lot. To have that put on us is a lot. It's a lot of weight. So the answer, of course, anyone can find anyone inspiring. Of course, you're allowed to find someone with a disability inspiring, but realize that sometimes sometimes it's a lot for us to hear that. because we're just living our lives.
Definitely. Kira.
Yeah, I have some, so I, growing up, my mom has a disability, so it was really interesting. I always wanted to be exactly like her. Like I wanted to kind of work in the same field that she worked in, and I always wanted to I literally, my mom was like my hero, especially when I was young. She still is obviously very inspirational to me in the sense of all the things she was able to accomplish, not just literally as a human being. I never noticed the fact that her disability could possibly interfere with her success in any way. And so I think it is just really important when thinking someone's inspiring is why are you thinking that? Are you thinking it in spite of, or despite their disability, they're inspiring, or if it's because of all the trials and tribulations they've had to go to. Yeah, I think that's just really dependent on why you think they're inspirational. But yeah.
Definitely. I feel like we could almost have a whole hour on that one question.
I know. I really want to keep going, but I'm stopping myself.
Let's see.
Okay. Do you want me to read the next one?
Sure.
Okay. Do I give inaccessible places or events my business? I'm going to defer to Christy on this one.
Okay. So if I'm being real, there are places that I have gone that aren't all the way accessible. They may not have a ramp out front, but I have friends that want to go somewhere, or my mom and dad are like, hey, this is where we're going to dinner. But I have a manual chair that I can use with assistance. But I'll be honest, I would rather be using my power chair and having the ability to get in somewhere independently. I have an example real quick. So my sister got married about 6 years ago. And my parents were all excited, and they're like, oh, so the bridal party will be on a set of risers. And I was like, okay, well, you're going to be giving a speech. Well, it still was that way because it was my sister's day, but I wasn't able to be in my power chair, and I'm short. I'm 5'2". And so all you could see while I did the speech was the top of my head. And because I was nervous, as any sister would be when they're saying how great their sister and brother-in-law were, I shook. So there was me shaking while I was giving the speech for my sister on our wedding day on a riser where no one could see me. If it was up to me, I wouldn't have done it that way. And it kind of put me in a weird situation. But for that day, I had, because I wanted to be there for my sister, I had to give them my business. But I did let my sister and my parents know how frustrated I was. And they learned, since then, they've been learning about ableism too. And they're like, oh, I understand now. I understand why that bothered you. So like Lauren said, sometimes, we use our experiences, may they be positive or negative, to educate and teach people. And I guess that was one of those moments for me.
Okay. I'm just going to touch on this. Is that something that I personally do? Is I go to places I want to go, and when I find that some portion of their business or facility or what have you is inaccessible to either me or someone in my party, I talk to them. Either I send a anonymous email, or you find the proper authoritative channels through government or disability offices, and really you can start advocating. If you see stuff like that, you can advocate right away, because the more it's us people, it takes people, it takes voices. So if enough people say something about a certain place, then it's going to get changed. There's no other way to say it.
Yes. Oh, I don't mean to cut you off, Lauren, but
that was it.
Oh, especially on Facebook or Instagram. And not that that's where you want to go, but people see it, and they'll have to address it, because and that's the way that change happens, at least in my experience, or you can feel like you're making towards a change.
Yep, doing it that way, and then also going at it through governmental channels also. When you do it, it works. Yep. Genuinely, it works. Okay, so
hold on, Kira's got
sorry, Kira.
So I don't have much experience with needing to like check out the accessibility of a location when going somewhere. Is that something that you would find on like when looking it up, like in like, because I know Google has like a list of things that like people frequently say, or like how they qualify it. So like, for example, one that I see quite often is like LGBTQ plus friendly. So like, is there that for like accessible?
So
like accessibility?
It should be ADA accessible. It should just be the Americans with Disabilities Act. It should be ADA accessible, and it should have the little icon on it. And if it's not ADA accessible, then you can report them.
Yeah.
So really, if it's not ADA compliant in any way, and here's the thing, you can't get mad at businesses. I am one of those people. I'm like, people don't know unless you tell them. How can they know unless you tell them, or unless they ask, which we're going to get to, I think, here a little bit. But really, what's important is telling people your need. So if I go to a somewhere that I know that I'm going to frequent a lot, I'll say, hey, you're my neighborhood diner. Could you maybe print out, a large print menu for me, because I'm going to frequent your place 3 times a week,
Yeah.
Or send it to me in a PDF. Hey, that's accessible for me personally. So like, it really just, you have to not only, making sure that places are accessible. Yeah, technically they'll have that little icon. But if you have a feeling something's a little wrong, then look up what the actual law is and check it out. Don't hark on people. Educate. It's not you're doing it wrong. No, people just don't know. Let's stop. Let's stop harking on people and just inform. It doesn't. That's all we can do is inform.
Yeah, and people aren't going to listen if you hark on them.
Exactly.
They're gonna shut down.
Exactly. Next one.
Okay, I can read this one.
Okay.
Can I use accessible parking or toilets if I don't have a disability? Does someone wanna, or should I just start out with this one?
Go for it.
Okay.
This is all you.
So, like I said, I use a power wheelchair and sometimes a manual wheelchair, and it's strange because before I have the van that I do, I had a van that opened up with the ramp in the back. So we always wouldn't take the accessible spot, because I'm like, oh, well, someone else would need it more than I could, or it's like some older person would need it more than I could. But as we got a accessible van that had a ramp on the side, I realized that there is not another option. And I've struggled with a lot of people just using the tag, right? For whatever reason, whether they were injured or had something going on, or they just used it from a friend, or who knows. But it's been harder for me to find a accessible parking spot where I can get off safely, and where the van, if somebody parks close to it, won't get into an accident or get damaged. Which is something that I didn't know until we got the ramp that came out the side. I'll be honest, I was a little prideful. I was like, no, I don't, like, we don't need it. We can do it without it. But it is something that I've come to know. Also related to toilets. So usually the bigger bathrooms have the child like place where you can change diapers, or for folks that need to adults that need it for whatever reason. And that is okay, but I have experienced so many times when people are just in there, even employees are just in there, and I'm sitting there having to really go to the bathroom because that's just where I'm at. And people will, oh, I'm sorry, I was on the phone. At Universal, someone did that. And in Spanish, 5 people were like, no, there's someone out here that needs to use it. And they said, I don't care, and continued to use the bathroom for about 20 minutes. I'll be honest, it's very frustrating. But the bathroom situation is something that I need. I need a grab bar. I need more space. And that's just, there's no way around it. So I will actually, like, when somebody comes out that doesn't need to use it, I'll kind of look at them or say something, and they don't like it, but it's all about education, like Lauren was saying, and putting our voices out there.
Yep. Can I date someone with a disability? Well, considering I'm blind and I've had a handful of boyfriends in my life, and I'm married, I got 2 kids, I'd say sure. I'm done.
Okay.
No,
And
no, I'm kidding. No, this question is irksome to me, because this question I've heard it so many times, and the question itself just screams, it's just so ableist. You're looking at the disability first. You're not looking at the person first, even in the question. Like, you're assuming that the person cannot, either is not mentally, that anyone with a disability is not their own guardian, so you have to ask, which rude, as to not to, quote our video, rude. Or you're like assuming, I don't know what else. What else would you assume? That they're not physically able to date somebody, mess around? Maybe you should date someone with a disability and find out. Sorry, was that too much?
no, I was perfectly fine.
I quit. Now I'm done.
Kira, do you have anything to add?
Well, as someone who is the child of someone with disability, my dad, he was able-bodied, so I know that my mom also dated people prior to my father, and I think a lot of people's feelings about my mom in terms of prospective dating is, people quite often assumed that because she had a physical disability meant that she also had a cognitive disability. I think that's just a really common what's the word?
Misconception?
Misconception that we have. And I think it's really just a matter of asking if someone dates. And that's basically it. Meaning, like, do they even date to begin with? Is that something they want to participate in? Like, so yeah. But yeah, I think yes, if the person feels comfortable with dating. So.
And I can answer that quickly. I know I'm watching the time. We've got 10 minutes, so I want to make sure that we have time for questions. But can I date someone with a disability? Well, the answer to that is yes. I've been with the person that I'm currently with for 14 years. But the person that a person is dating can also, they can be able-bodied, or they can have a physical or a different type of disability. So yeah, basically a person's in a relationship with another person because they want to be.
Love is love is love is love.
Yep. And love is love every month, not just in the month of June.
Exactly.
But yeah, so so do we want to tackle the last question and then open it up for some questions? Or
Yeah.
It's kind of a loaded question, so but yeah.
I wrote it funny. So what is intersectionality and how is it connected? So intersectionality is basically how the different types of marginalized groups have parallels or have commonalities or intersections. I have enough information to be dangerous about this. So all I am going to say is I am personally I am legally blind. I am in the LGBTQ community. My tongue just got tied. I have a mental illness. I don't have a mental illness. I have a mental health struggles that I go through. It's called seasonal affective disorder. That one's a little rough for me to talk about openly, just because it's a sad. I try to make jokes. So those things, I feel I have connections to all of those groups or areas. And sometimes those connections make us stronger as humans, and acknowledging those connections just in other human beings can sometimes be very powerful. And that's all I have to say about that.
I feel like that was, yeah, you covered that a lot and said it so eloquent. Said it so eloquently. I think I'll just add one thing. So intersectionality for me, and being disabled, coming out as LGBT allowed me to kind of be one with the disability intersectionality a little bit, and to kind of accept that a little bit more. So I don't see myself as compartmentalized, like I'm disabled and I'm LGBT, but it's kind of melded. And I think a lot of that has to do with just, you know, self-exploring and maybe working for the center and just experiences that I've had. But I think that it's kind of shaped who I am and how I interact with people and serve the community. So. Well, that, go ahead.
Everyone. So yeah, everyone said it really well. So
sounds good. Well, now we have some time. Yeah. I was gonna say something too, but I thought it wouldn't work very well. So now we get to talk about share some examples of this or microaggression behavior or questions that you have.
Yeah.
Since we have about 9 minutes until.
Should I skip to that slide? Or
I think that would be okay with me if it's up to Christy.
Yeah, no, I think so, because then we can kind of get to questions.
Mm-hmm.
Rowan, yeah, I've enjoyed seeing your cat walk around, but I'm wondering also if you have anything you want to share or questions for us or just thoughts.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about disability lately because I have a slew of invisible disabilities where sometimes I can function normally, and other times I cannot. So I think the hardest thing for me has always been second guessing myself with saying, are these people right? You know, because I can function some days and not others. Am I disabled enough to consider myself disabled? And is it, you know, it's very easy to listen to other people when they say, I've seen you and you seem fine, you know, some days. So what's going on here? It's, you know, the more I think about it, I always remember tons of people telling me, you're a hypochondriac, or, you know, you're making this up, or it's all in your head, and that sort of thing. And that gets very insidious because you get to a place then where you have all that dialogue in your head that other people gave you, all those negative thoughts, and it's so hard to let go of. And it's like, then I judge myself about my disability. I was going to say that I think with an invisible disability, that seems to be like the hardest thing for me.
Well, and I think that's why having conversations like this and groups like the disability LGBT group that Christy runs or helps to facilitate, like that, because we are few and far between. There are the disability community is Kitty. The disability community is very small, but we are a small but mighty crew. So it's important to, you know, to find, you know, maybe not all the time, because sometimes talking about it too much, you have to find your own personal balance. How much of the disability community do you need? How much do you need a peer? Do you need a support group? Do you need you know, one-on-one coaching? Do you, like, you know, you have to kind of determine that for yourself. And that's sometimes it's a hard thing to kind of figure out.
Thank you for sharing, Rowan.
Yeah.
You.
Well, if you have any other questions, feel free to, or thoughts, feel free to share them. Otherwise, it was great being with my panelists tonight and sharing with all of you and the audience that will be watching later. But this is the start of a conversation that I think needs to continually happen in communities, not only the LGBT community, but all over, in order to make change. So
Agreed.
Thank you. And then Rowan, did you get the link for the survey?
Did you email it or did you put it in the chat?
I put it in the chat.
I did not get it.
Okay, I will do that again, hopefully.
Thank you.
Yep. And with that being said, I will stop the recording now.